The clever blind man. Blind people have a sense of touch that helps them see what they can't see with their eyes. Once there was a blind man who had a super sense of touch. By and by the fame of his extra keen sense of touch spread far and wide, and one day reached the king's court as well. The king didn't believe it. He said that he would test it personally. So, the blind man was summoned to the court for the test. He was given a seat, and on the king's bidding, a wolf cub was placed on his lap. The blind man caressed every part of the cub's body to know its reality. The king asked, "What is this baby animal?" Blind man replied, "Your Honor, it may be a wolf cub or a fox cub. But certainly, I can say that it won't be safe to trust it in a sheepfold." The king was highly pleased at the blind man's reply and rewarded him handsomely. Baby camel and mother. A mother and a baby camel were lying around, and suddenly the baby camel asked, "Mother, may I ask you some questions?" Mother said, "Sure." "Why, son, is there something bothering you?" Baby said, "Why do camels have humps?" Mother said, "Well, son, we are desert animals, we need the humps to store water and we are known to survive without water." Baby said, "Okay, then why are our legs long and our feet rounded?" Mother said, "Son, obviously they are meant for walking in the desert. You know, with these legs I can move around the desert better than anyone does." Baby said, "Okay, then why are our eyelashes long? Sometimes it bothers my sight." Mother with pride said, "My son, those long thick eyelashes are your protective cover. They help to protect your eyes from the desert sand and wind." Baby after thinking said, "I see. So the hump is to store water when we are in the desert, the legs are for walking through the desert, and these eyelashes protect my eyes from the desert. Then what in God's name are we doing here in the zoo?" It was high summer. The sun was extremely hot. Two travelers were going along a dusty road that had no trees along its sides. Looking for some shelter from the hot sun, they saw a tree with big leaves and branches spread like an umbrella. They placed their belongings on the ground, and sat in the cool thick shade of the tree. After taking some rest, one traveler said to the other, "What a useless tree it is. It bears no fruits at all." Hearing this, the tree felt pinched and burst out, "You ungrateful soul. On one hand, you are taking shelter in my cool shade from the burning heat of the sun, and on the other hand, you are calling me useless. Get up and leave the place immediately to be scorched again." It was high autumn. An olive tree and a fig tree stood near each other. The fig tree had lost all his leaves and became quite bare. Seeing his neighbor, the olive tree puffed up with pride. The olive tree taunted the fig tree, "How unlucky you are. You lose your leaves every autumn to be bare. But I flourish all the year round." The fig tree argued, "Friend, it's my destiny to be bare and yours to be evergreen. But there is nothing to feel small or proud about it. It is out of control of both of us." Few days later, there occurred a snowfall. The snow settled on the leaves of the olive tree and gave way under its heavy weight. But as for the fig tree, the snow fell to the ground through its bare branches and it survived the snowstorm. Once upon a time, there was a trader who had a large flock of goats. People used to come from distant and nearby places to buy goats from him. Thus the trader was earning a lot from his trade. He had also employed a goat herd, who drove the flock to a pasture in the morning, and after sunset, drove them back and shut them up in the fold. One day, the goat herd was about to drive the flock back home, as usual, when he saw that some goats had strayed aside. So, he tried to get them back by calling and whistling. All the strayed goats returned and joined the flock, but one stubborn goat didn't obey him. So, he threw a stone at her. It hit one of her horns and it was broken. The goat herd got scared, and begged the goat not to tell anything about it to the trader. But he was silly because the horn itself would have revealed the reality. A merchant and his donkey. One beautiful spring morning, a merchant loaded his donkey with bags of salt to go to the market, in order to sell the salt. The merchant and his donkey were walking along together. They had not walked far when they reached a river on the way. Unfortunately, the donkey slipped and fell into the river. As it scrambled up the bank of the river, it noticed that the bags of salt loaded on his back had become lighter. There was nothing the merchant could do except return home, where he loaded his donkey with more bags of salt. As they reached the slippery riverbank again, the donkey fell into the river, this time deliberately. Thus the salt was wasted again. By now the merchant knew the donkey trick. He wanted to teach the animal a lesson. As he returned home the second time with the donkey, the merchant loaded bags of sponges on its back. The duo set out on their trip to the market a third time. On reaching the river, the donkey very cleverly fell into the water again. But now, instead of the load becoming lighter, it became heavier. The merchant laughed at the donkey and said, "You foolish donkey, your trick has been discovered. You should know that you cannot fool anyone too many times." The elephant rope belief. Sometimes an inspiring story helps us find out the strength within us. An inspiring story helps you inspire yourself and motivate yourself. It also helps find out what you can do and what you cannot. There are hundreds you may have read in your life. But how many of them actually made changes in your mind is a question. Here are some inspiring short stories that not only gives a powerful lesson, but can also be helpful to learn about some unknown truths about life. A gentleman was walking through an elephant camp, and he spotted that the elephants weren't being kept in cages or held by the use of chains. All that was holding them back from escaping the camp was a small piece of rope tied to one of their legs. As the man gazed upon the elephants, he was completely confused as to why the elephants didn't just use their strength to break the rope and escape the camp. They could easily have done so, but instead, they didn't try to at all. Curious and wanting to know the answer, he asked a trainer nearby why the elephants were just standing there and never tried to escape. The trainer replied, "When they are very young, and much smaller, we use the same size rope to tie them and, at that age, it's enough to hold them. As they grow up, they are conditioned to believe they cannot break away. They believe the rope can still hold them, so they never try to break free." The only reason that the elephants weren't breaking free and escaping from the camp was that over time they adopted the belief that it just wasn't possible. Moral: no matter how much the world tries to hold you back, always continue with the belief that what you want to achieve is possible. Believing you can become successful is the most important step in actually achieving it. A pound of butter. There was a farmer who sold a pound of butter to a baker. One day, the baker decided to weigh the butter to see if he was getting the right amount, which he wasn't. Angry about this, he took the farmer to court. The judge asked the farmer if he was using any measure to weight the butter. The farmer replied, "Honor, I am primitive. I don't have a proper measure, but I do have a scale." The judge asked, "Then how do you weigh the butter?" The farmer replied, "Your Honor, long before the baker started buying butter from me, I have been buying a pound loaf of bread from him. Every day when the baker brings the bread, I put it on the scale and give him the same weight in butter. If anyone is to be blamed, it is the baker." Moral: in life, you get what you give. Don't try and cheat others. The fox and the stork. One day, a selfish fox invited a stork for dinner. The stork was very happy with the invitation. She reached the fox's home on time and knocked at the door with her long beak. The fox took her to the dinner table, and served some soup in shallow bowls for both of them. As the bowl was too shallow for the stork, she couldn't have soup at all. But the fox licked up his soup quickly. The stork was angry and upset, but she didn't show her anger and behaved politely. To teach a lesson to the fox, she then invited him for dinner the next day. She too served soup, but this time the soup was served in 2 tall narrow vases. The stork devoured the soup from her vase, but the fox couldn't drink any of it because of his narrow neck. The fox realized his mistake and went home famished.